We often think of macroeconomics and corporate marketing as two completely separate worlds operating on entirely different scales. But if you look closer at the underlying forces, silos, trade friction, supply chain bottlenecks, and trust gaps, the parallels are striking. Have you ever considered how high-level macroeconomic policies like interprovincial trade, cross-border supply chains, and regional alliances actually mirror the everyday battles we fight in B2B marketing? Welcome to the solo episode recording on the B2B Marketers on a Mission podcast, and I'm your host, Christian Klepp. In today's episode, we're going to take a step back from the tactical day-to-day of campaigns and look at the bigger picture. I'll be sharing 4 major takeaways from a recent high-level economic event I attended and translating those macroeconomic concepts into actionable strategies you can apply to your B2B organization. Specifically, we're going to cover breaking down internal silos to foster true cross-functional collaboration, eliminating buyer friction and building strategic co-marketing initiatives, treating clean data like critical minerals, and leveraging internal subject matter experts, and building organizational trust while defending the marketing mandate. And before we jump into all of that, I want to give a special shout out to the sponsor of this episode, the Economic Club of Canada. Let's dive in. All right, so back at the end of May, I had the privilege of attending an incredible event hosted by the Economic Club of Canada at the Delta Hotel in downtown Toronto. The event was entitled Rebuilding Alliances, Reconstruire des Alliances. It featured a keynote and fireside discussion with Charles Millard, leader of the Quebec Liberal Party, and it was moderated by Tasha Karidan of the National Post. It was an interesting, fully bilingual event, might I add, which definitely pushed me out of my comfort zone as I've been practicing my French. But beyond the language practice, sitting there listening to political and business leaders discuss economic growth, trade barriers, and cross-border cooperation made me realize the exact same forces holding back economies are also holding back B2B marketing teams. How so? Well, let's get into it. So the first major theme at the conference revolved around interprovincial collaboration. So specifically in this context, Quebec and Ontario. So together, these two provinces account for roughly 58% of Canada's national GDP. Yet so often, they operate in silos. The panel made a strong case that opening as one integrated economy rather than 13 fragmented ones is the key to global competitiveness. So how does this actually apply to B2B marketing, you might ask? In B2B marketing, in fact, operating in silos is deadly. How often do we see marketing, sales, product, and customer success operating as isolated islands? As marketers, we can't just sit in our corner, produce content, and throw leads over the fence. We have to be able to initiate collaboration. So how do we do that? One is by finding common ground. So we need to be the ones to bridge the gaps between sales, regional offices, and product teams, and run joint projects that encourage cross-functional cooperation. 2, we need to identify internal champions. So just like the provinces in Canada working with the federal government, you need to cultivate internal champions in other departments, especially sales and revenue operations, to get marketing initiatives off the ground. So when you break down internal silos, your entire go-to-market strategy functions as one unified economy rather than fragmented teams. So that's the first takeaway. The second core takeaway was about trade barriers and supply chains. So the keynote speaker talked about formalizing interprovincial trade agreements, improving labor mobility, and easing regulatory burdens between provinces to speed up the movement of goods, services, and talent. So how does this connect to your marketing strategy? It's all about reducing that friction and building strategic alliances. So reduce the friction for the buyer. So conduct deep research to find where friction exists in your buyer journey. Where are prospects getting stuck? What regulatory or internal trust barriers are stopping them? So create content specifically aimed at easing those pain points so your sales team can keep deals moving seamlessly. The next one is forging strategic co-marketing partnerships. In business, you don't always have to build everything yourself. Look for external non-competing partners who provide complementary solutions to your target audience. Then package your offerings together or co-create content. By leveraging each other's strengths, you build instant credibility and open up whole new referrals. And finally, employer branding. The panel highlighted how trade reform directly impacts worker mobility. So in today's dynamic uncertain market, B2B marketers need to step up and take a bigger role in employer branding. So positioning your organization as a great place to work makes it significantly easier to attract top talent in a competitive environment. So during the final panel session, there was some discussion around economic drivers, specifically focusing on critical minerals, innovation sectors like life sciences, and the vital role of small and medium enterprises. So SMEs are literally the engine that powers regional economies. So this brings us to two powerful metaphors for B2B marketing. You can probably guess the first one. The first one is data is the critical mineral of B2B. Just like mining critical minerals powers modern tech and green infrastructure, clean centralized data powers effective marketing strategies. If your data is dirty, fragmented, or stuck in separate tools, you can't make informed decisions. So treat your data like a strategic natural resource. Mine it, refine it, and use it to drive strategy. The second part is about subject matter experts, and these are your organization's engine. So in B2B marketers, SME stands for subject matter experts. So just like small and medium enterprises drive macroeconomies, your internal experts drive your organizational brand's authority. So don't let your executive team or product builder stay hidden. Interview your internal experts, extract their deep insights, document their perspectives, and build thought leadership and customer success stories around them. In a world flooded with generic AI content, authentic human expertise is going to be your ultimate differentiator. Finally, the event closed with discussions on leadership, institutional roles, and trust. So a key insight there was that while defending provincial mandates is crucial, long-term success requires intergovernmental trust and diversity of thought to shape resilient macroeconomic policies. So as B2B marketers, we must balance two things: defending our mandate while being ultimate collaborators. You have to defend marketing's strategic value, proving that marketing isn't just a coloring department or a support mechanism, right? But a driver of business growth. However, you can't really build trust by acting defensively, right? So how do you do it? One is by bridging the trust gap. You need to build trust across your organization by being the relentless voice of the customer. Bring in real market research, deep customer insights, and clear revenue impact to the table. Two, you need to embrace diversity of thought. Leverage diverse skill sets across your team and cross-departmental partners. Different perspectives help you spot gaps in your messaging and allow you to amplify what makes your organization truly unique. So finally, to wrap things up, macroeconomics and B2B marketing aren't as far apart as they seem. The same strategies that build economic alliances can transform your marketing engine. Break down internal silos and partner with sales, product, and customer success. Reduce buyer friction and forge strategic co-marketing alliances. Mine your data like critical minerals and amplify your subject matter experts. And finally, build trust through deep research while standing strong in your marketing mandate. So I hope you enjoyed this episode, and a massive thank you once again to the Economic Club of Canada for organizing such a thought-provoking event in Toronto. And thank you, of course, to the panelists like Charles Millard and Tasha Kiridan for inspiring these reflections. If you enjoyed this solo episode, please make sure to subscribe, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and share this episode with a B2B marketer who needs to hear this and who needs to tear down a few silos this week. Until next time, take care, stay safe, and talk to you soon. Bye for now.